What's up, guys? Good evening, Azeroth, and welcome to episode 151 of the World of Goldcraft. I'm your host, as usual, the Lazy Goldmaker of thelazygoldmaker.com, and we're going to be talking about gold making for about 20 minutes. Now, as you might notice, or might not notice, I'm not doing this live today because my wife has broken her foot, which means that I'm effectively a single dad for the moment, so I won't have that much time for streaming. But I will be putting out all the other content as usual, because that's easier to do in smaller chunks, but that's what it is. Of course, the podcast is made available by my patrons that, amongst other things, can get access to 7 days of early access to all of the posts I write for thelazygoldmaker.com. So if you're interested in that, head over to patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about something. We're going to talk about New World, or I'm going to talk about New World. And we're not going to talk just about New World. We're going to talk about some of the design choices they've made in New World, which is a more crafting-focused MMO, and how this contrasts to what is in WoW, and whether or not Blizzard should take some inspiration from this for World of Warcraft. So I've been playing a little bit of New World this week, and I have been planning for a while to branch out a little bit into some other games and make some content for them as well. And with the launch of New World, new MMOs are always super fun at the beginning, almost always, unless they absolutely suck. So I had to jump in on that. I'll still be focusing primarily on World of Warcraft, but I will. So the podcast will also primarily have a World of Warcraft focus. But in this episode, we're going to look a little bit about how New World functions and whether or not Blizzard should take inspiration and sort of my thoughts on the overall design at play here. So as I said, it's very interesting to notice the contrasts in the profession and the overall systems and the profession system in particular between World of Warcraft and New World. And crafting and gathering is one of the major selling points, one of the most important features of New World. And it's a very important part of character progression, more similar to RuneScape, with a huge number of trade skills that takes a long time to level off. And there's a lot more of the game that's tied into crafting. Now, interestingly enough, in New World, as far as I can tell, I've been playing the game completely blind, as far as like not watching guides, not reading up on anything, just playing. As far as I can tell, there are no vendors at all. The only way you can sell items is to other players, and you can salvage items get some of the materials back, and that's about it. So the main thing will be the actual raw resources, and then trading those and the finished items with other players. Now, one thing, overall, New World is essentially a one-character game. It's designed, you have one character and you're meant to be able to do everything you want on that character. Like, every character will have equal access to all of the weapon skills. You just have to level them up. Weapon mastery trees that determine all of the skills. You have the active skills and passives and all of that stuff. They have a talent tree, or multiple two talent trees for each weapon. And then it's the same with crafting professions and gathering professions. Every character has access to every trade skill in New World. Now, on some level, this will of course mean that compared to, say, WoW, there'll be less of a need to trade with other players, because you can gather everything yourself and craft all of the intermediate materials yourself and sell them. But on the other side, it's going to take a lot more effort to max out any profession in New World. They are very, very long endeavors. It's a lot of grinding required to get to 200 in any gathering profession, or refining profession, or finished profession, or finished crafting profession. But it's very interesting that everything is essentially account-wide. You're meant to be able to just have one character and experience the entire game eventually on that character. Of course, you'll want to specialize because it takes so much time. And that's going to have an effect on the barriers to entry to various markets. Now, WoW is based on a more old-school paradigm, or more like RPG, where a specific character has made some exclusive choices. Like, you have in WoW, you pick a race, you pick a class, and your orc monk can't also be an orc warlock. If you want a warlock, you have to level a new character. And you also only have two profession slots, or two main profession slots per character. And this is, of course, a source of a lot of value, or at least a lot of the profit that you can make in WoW gold making is due to this, because it means that there's a limited number of characters that can compete with you. If someone doesn't have alchemy on their character, then they can't craft flasks. They can't compete with you when you're selling flasks. Whereas in New World, every character will have access to every profession. Of course, not right away, and it takes a lot of time to level. So in New World, it's more about what profession do you prioritize leveling, and then you might be able to make gold with that if you've managed to push it to the max level when no one else has. But then further down the line, then everyone will probably be able to get everything to max if there's a value and a reason to do that, which I don't know yet because I'm figuring out by myself. Now, as someone who thinks that economic optimization in MMOs is a lot of fun, I really love the overall profession design of New World. Because there are 3 types of professions. There are gathering professions, there are refining professions that take raw materials and turn them into intermediate materials. And then there are the crafting professions to craft finished items. And an absolutely staggering amount of different resources. Where it's very clear that they've taken some design cues and inspiration from the genre of like survival crafting games like Rust, Minecraft, Subnautica, New World, or No Man's Sky, where there's a lot of different materials that you have to go about and collect, and then you gradually upgrade your gear and get access to more cooler stuff. And this seems to jive really well with the player base, like all of the chopping wood memes all over the place, and everyone is looking forward to chopping wood in New World. And I really hope that Blizzard takes some cues from this in terms of trying to reincorporate professions into the core of the game again. Because professions are sort of like this thing that you don't have to care about unless you want to make gold. If you're not trying to make gold, there's zero reason in bothering with professions in the current iteration of World of Warcraft. They've had profession bonuses in the past, but they've also been a little bit annoying. But I think that there's a room in an MMO for some kind of economic or resource gathering type progression path. And I think that a lot of people enjoy that. There's so many games based around that entire premise of gradually getting more and more resources and utilizing them to unlock more crafts and then unlocking more power behind that. They've done a lot of currencies in WoW lately, but they're like tied to one specific thing. And none of them intermingle. They're just like this silo system of like cataloged research for Korthia rep, and that's it. So I think something that's tradable and that ties into your player power in some way is something that would be very cool, and I think it would fit nicely into Blizzard's overall focus on making sure that all of their games are accessible and relevant for casual gamers. I mean, that was one of the original major selling points of WoW, is that it was an MMO that was also fun if you were not a super hardcore player. Now, with the incredible amount of intermediate crafting that's required in New World, you might think that you need to spend a lot of time crafting. But you don't. New World has just removed crafting time as a factor at all. Whether you choose to craft 1 of an intermediate material or 1,000, it takes the exact same amount of time, which is literally just a couple of seconds. And that was just like a what when I noticed that, because if anyone who's made gold in Shadowlands will know, I mean, if you're making good gold in Shadowlands, then you're going to focus on stuff like legendaries. And what do legendaries require? An absolutely silly amount of intermediate materials. The number of hours that I have spent crafting stuff like Shadowghast ingots, enchanted lightless silk, enchanted Elysium bars is incredible. Whereas they've just removed that part of the game completely, or of profession boringness completely from New World. Instead, they have a lot of interesting things where your professions, when you get higher profession skill, you get better. You get a higher chance of getting bonus materials when you're refining, or you get a chance of getting better stat procs when you craft a weapon. and all of that stuff, and that scales with your profession skill. I don't know how far it scales because I haven't gotten that far in the game yet. But really, just the incredible amount of time wasting in World of Warcraft crafting right now is... I haven't really thought about it until I realized that you can just not have that. You can just have craft all take as much time as crafting separately. The game is still going to work. Of course, that will likely mean that more people have time to craft legendaries and compete with you, so it would drive profit margins down. But at the same time, like for general people just looking to play the game, it would be so much better, and now you wouldn't be... I feel like right now you're pretty much required to have a second account if you want to be in legendary crafting, just because all the intermediate crafting takes so much time. But imagine just making it more enjoyable. So professions could maybe actually be good again. I also think that some of the random procs, there's a lot of weird procs you can get in New World that's interesting. Like perks. You have items have stats and perks are like extra effects that can also scale. Like they're similar to corruption effects from 8.3. I'm not sure if they're as strong. I don't think they are. They're more like maybe something between like a tier set bonus and corruption, or maybe a little less than that, like maybe a trait on your artifact weapon from Legion, something along those lines is what these effects are. You can have these on any item, and they can proc randomly when crafting, and depending on your crafting skill, it's a higher chance to get these effects. I think that's pretty cool, because I do think that outside of legendaries and consumables, obviously, there's really nothing that crafting professions in WoW offers to endgame players. There's nothing. It's just completely disconnected. All of the actual progression happens either through like high-end M+, or a raiding, or PvP if you're into the PvP side of the game. And then there's like some time-gated grinds for like a little bit of extra power, like for sockets through the Archivist Codex in 9.1, for instance. But I really think there's a room for professions here, and I think done right, I think that the success of more crafting-based games shows that this is something that a lot of people will enjoy. Doesn't mean it's going to work. There's definitely opportunities to screw this up as well. But I think it could be a lot more exciting. Like right now, of course, you get random secondaries when you craft an item, but they don't really matter, and you can only craft item level 230 gear, which is like barely entry-level catch-up gear in the current patch. So it's just overall like not very exciting. And then you have the legendaries, which is just like a drudgery of extreme time commitment to keep them all in the auction house. So there are some questions here, like should WoW go more account wide? Should we let people have more professions than just 2, for instance? This is something you could look at. And this is something that's been generally talked about a lot for WoW in terms of other systems as well. Should rep be account-wide? Should essences from BFA, for those who remember that? What about Renown in Shadowlands? Because there's a lot of really boring content that you feel compelled to do multiple times if you want to be optimal in World of Warcraft. That's just not interesting. Whereas that's just not the case in New World. Here you have access to everything on one character. You don't need to make another character. You can just start grinding Great Axe skill if you want to use a Great Axe. And then eventually you'll have high enough skill, and then you can respec your attributes so you have more points in strength, and then you can go murder things with a Great Axe instead of your former spear bow build or whatever you were running. And then obviously with everyone having access to the same professions, you'd think that will have an effect on the competition. Of course, none of us have gotten far enough to understand how how professions will intermingle in New World. But I'm not sure if it would have that much of an effect letting people like have all professions on a single character in WoW. Because everyone who's serious about gold making will have multiple professions, they'll have multiple crafting characters. And leveling does not take that much time in WoW. It's relatively easy. I have enough characters that I have every profession at max level in Shadowlands. I've had that for every expansion in of the last couple of expansions. It is a little bit of a time commitment, but nothing extreme. Like most people can get this done if they want to, over a month or two to get like enough characters to level 60. Now, where this would have a huge effect is for stuff like new recipes and rep grinds to get them. So if you had all professions on one character, then the moment you were done with Korthia, you would just be cranking out Crafter's Mark of the Chain Dial from Alchemy for all of your professions from day one, so the profit margin would be a lot lower, because you would be doing that in every profession. So whenever new stuff is released, we'd see a lot more competition than currently. But when we're in the period of the expansion where we are at right now, I don't think we would see that much change, because I think that most of the people who are your heavy competition right now are people who have access to a lot of crafting professions already, and they probably have access to most of them. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I feel like that's one of the things that Blizzard might take from New World. If New World has sustained success, I think they might look at the having everything on one character and maybe going a little bit more in that direction in some fashion. I don't not necessarily think professions are the first one to do. I think account-wide reputations might be the first one to go, potentially, if they decide to go that direction, but we'll see. Another thing, the gathering professions in New World, they're actually the opposite of crafting. They're the ones that force you to waste time. Interacting with a node, with a gathering node, takes a lot of time, and you need to interact with a lot of nodes to level up. Currently, I'm approaching like level 50 logging skill out of 200, and it takes me a couple of seconds to cut down a 3, and that's like can be anything from like it takes me 3 to 5 seconds or something like that, and that will give me anywhere from like 1/6, 1/7 of a crafting or a gathering skill level up to about 1/3, depending on how big the tree is, because if it's a bigger tree, it takes longer to chop down, but you also get more gathering XP from doing that. Now, what they've done is that your gathering speed scales up as you level, which feels very good, because you actually feel yourself getting better. So now you're chopping down trees much faster than you were at the beginning. So that's pretty cool. But it's going to take a lot of time to level to maximum. With the gathering professions, I saw Want to Buy Gold was tweeting about it. He was like level 100, and based on his calculation, it was like 10% of the way, which is just incredible. If that's the case, then you're talking about some incredible exponential scaling on the experience needed for the last couple of levels. There's also a pretty cool system where you need gathering items, just like in WoW. You need like a mining pick, or at least you used to do. You have the same, but they are equipable items in New World, and they can have magic effects. They can be magic things. They can have perks, and that's pretty cool. So you can get like a logging hatchet that has a chance of giving you extra materials, or gives you more experience when you chop down trees. That's pretty cool. That's gonna allow you to like, okay, I want to do a big, like, just focusing on leveling up logging skill. So you just find the axe you can find with like the highest bonus to experience, and you slam that down, and then you go out and you chop trees like your life depends on it. I'm sure that people have already started metagaming this and figuring out what the optimal approach is, which will obviously happen, but right now, at least for me playing the game like without foreknowledge, it's a lot of fun. Like, oh yeah, I got a cool new logging hatchet. Now I can log faster, or now I can chop. Now I get more experience from chopping down trees. So yeah, definitely. My overall feeling is that like I hope that WoW takes some pointers from this profession system. Now, of course, WoW and New World are completely different games. They're both MMOs, but New World is a game that is a more traditional open world MMO with a focus on like things like territory control, world PvP, and all that stuff, and a very, very heavy emphasis on crafting and gathering as a very important part of the gameplay experience. That's not really the case in WoW at all. WoW is a game that's focused on the end game PvE and PvP systems. That's really the only thing that matters in WoW. That might make some of you mad, but I don't think that I personally find the cosmetic collection part of WoW or the lore particularly interesting anymore, even though I was a huge Warcraft fan back in the day. The main reason to really be excited for WoW, and the truly unique selling point of WoW to me compared to any other MMO or RPG, is the end game content, and particularly raids. Of course, that's just my opinion. But that's also, you can tell that that's a lot of what the focus of the overall gameplay systems, all of them feed into either PvE, primarily PvE. And that's considered the pinnacle, the end game of WoW is truly the PvE side of the game. And that's instant PvE pretty much. And anything that doesn't come from Mythic Plus or PvP or raids just doesn't really matter for character progression past a certain point. There are some grinds, you have Korthia grind, which eventually gives you sockets and some conduits. But overall, there's really nothing that matters if you want to be the absolute strongest you can be in WoW. It's rating an M+ that matters. Nothing else matters. I have a hope/feeling that we'll see a larger reset of WoW with 10.0. Because they're setting up the opportunity for a significant time skip forward when we go back to Azeroth after Shadowlands. And I feel like that would be something that could be quite well received. We're coming back to Azeroth and 500 years has passed. Zones have changed. Kingdoms have changed. Maybe the factions are gone, finally. Or at least maybe we can group cross-factions so that half of the people who are Alliance aren't locked out of endgame PvE. I think that could be pretty cool. And I've had a feeling that that's going to be what's coming, but I have no idea. And that's also going to be the point where they could actually make some of these changes related to professions and making them more central to the experience again, if they wanted to take some cues from New World. Blizzard has had an incredible track record of taking good ideas from other MMOs and making their own twist on them. I mean, world quests were the concept has been in multiple MMOs all the way back from Warhammer Online had public quests, but they're not exactly the same, but they have a similar they're similar at least. Let's hope the New World does decently well, because that might mean that we see some changes to the profession system, which I know that I personally would be extremely excited about. So that was what I wanted to discuss about New World, and I see we've already talked for a very, very, very long time. Now there's one last thing we need to cover on this episode, and that's some very, very important 9.1.5 PTR notes. Because they are increasing the drop rate of a lot of materials in 9.1.5. All of the ores are now dropping at a 20% higher rate. Callous hides increased by 20%. Essences from prospecting up by 10%, and 20% for lightless silk. What does that mean? It means we can expect all those materials to go down in price with a release of 9.1.5, and all of the items that you craft with those items to also go down in value. What is a one item type that's very heavily affected by this, you might ask? Well, obviously it's legendaries. So what you should do right now is to restock legendaries and materials to a lower total. Unless you have an absolutely ton of time to craft and repost, I would definitely suggest starting to scale down as we get closer to 9.1.5, so that you don't have too much stock. You don't want to have too much stuff in your inventory when 9.1.5 hits. You want to prioritize having gold, because that gold is going to go much farther after the patch, most likely. So just keep that in mind when we approach 9.1.5. So guys, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did and you want to read more about gold making, you can do so at thelazygoldmaker.com. If you want to support the show, you can do so through patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker, or watch this video or watch the episodes on YouTube and like and subscribe to them to make sure that we can keep making it. So yeah, that's it. Have a profitable week. We'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.